Ivan Sergeyevich Turgenev was born on November 9, 1818, in Oryol, Russia, into a wealthy, noble family. His father, Sergei Nikolaevich Turgenev, was a cavalry officer from an aristocratic lineage, while his mother, Varvara Petrovna Ludovanova, was a wealthy landowner with a strong and domineering personality. His early life was heavily influenced by his mother's strict and often harsh upbringing, which shaped his views on serfdom and class divisions. Turgenev received a high-quality education, first at the University of Moscow and later at the University of St. Petersburg, where he studied literature and philosophy. His passion for European culture led him to further his studies at the University of Berlin, where he was deeply influenced by German philosophy, particularly Hegelianism. This exposure to Western thought would later be reflected in his literary works, which often contrasted traditional Russian values with progressive European ideas. Turgenev's personal life was complicated throughout. He never married, but had a long and passionate relationship with the French opera singer Pauline Viardot, whom he followed across Europe. His unrequited love for Viardot and his admiration for European culture contributed to his prolonged stays in France, Germany, and England, making him one of the most cosmopolitan Russian writers of his time. Main works. Turgenev was a prolific writer renowned for his novels, short stories, and plays, which significantly contributed to shaping Russian literature. His works often explored themes of social change, generational conflict, and the struggles between tradition and modernity. Fathers and Children 1862 is widely regarded as Turgenev's masterpiece. It introduced the character of Bazarov, a nihilist who rejects traditional values, and explored the tensions between the older, conservative generation and the younger, radical one. The novel sparked debates across Russia and remains one of the most important works in Russian literature. A Month in the Country, 1855, is one of the earliest examples of psychological realism in Russian drama. It examines the complexities of love and unfulfilled desires within an aristocratic household. Rudin 1856 is a novel about an intellectual protagonist who struggles with inaction and a lack of practical engagement in society. It reflects Turgenev's fascination with the so-called superfluous man archetype in Russian literature. Home of the Gentry 1859 explores themes of nostalgia, lost love, and the decline of the Russian aristocracy. Compared to his other works, it portrays a more sentimental and reflective tone. On the Eve 1860 is a story of love and revolution that examines the ideological and political tensions in Russia during the mid-19th century. Turgenev's literary style was distinctive for its poetic prose, profound psychological insight, and nuanced portrayal of characters. Unlike Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, who often depicted grand philosophical and historical narratives, Turgenev focused on personal dilemmas and social nuances, making his works both accessible and deeply introspective. Anecdotes and controversies. Turgenev's life was filled with interesting encounters and stories that reflected his unique position between Russian and European cultures. One famous anecdote involves his rivalry with Leo Tolstoy. Once, during a literary gathering, he was asked about his opinion on Russian literature. He famously remarked, "There are only two real writers in Russia, Tolstoy and myself." While the statement was likely made in jest, it showcased his confidence and awareness of his place in Russian literary history. Their ideological and personal differences led to a heated argument, after which Tolstoy challenged Turgenev to a duel. Fortunately, the duel never took place, and years later, on his deathbed, Tolstoy sent Turgenev a letter of reconciliation, which Turgenev sincerely appreciated. Despite his reputation as a refined and cultured writer, Turgenev was not without controversy. One of the biggest criticisms he faced was his perceived detachment from Russia. Many of his contemporaries, particularly nationalistic writers, accused him of being too Europeanized and out of touch with Russian realities. His prolonged stays in France and his admiration for Western liberalism often made him a target of criticism, particularly from Slavophiles who believed Russia should follow its unique path rather than imitate European models. For example, while Dostoevsky respected Turgenev's talent, he often criticized his westernized worldview and accused him of lacking a proper understanding of the Russian soul. This ideological divide between the two authors reflected a larger cultural debate in 19th century Russia about the country's direction, whether it should embrace Western liberalism or adhere to traditional Orthodox and nationalist values. His most famous novel, Fathers and Children, also sparked heated debates. While some praised its balanced depiction of generational conflict, others, especially radical intellectuals, felt that Turgenev misrepresented the nihilist movement by making Bazarov, the novel's nihilist protagonist, overly arrogant and ultimately tragic. Conservatives, on the other hand, saw the novel as a warning against the dangers of radical ideology. Turgenev himself claimed that he aimed to present a fair portrayal of both sides, but the controversy surrounding the book persisted for years. Conclusion: Ivan Turgenev remains one of the most significant figures in Russian literature. His works provided a bridge between the romanticism of the early 19th century and the realism that later dominated Russian literature. His nuanced portrayals of social change, generational conflict, and personal dilemmas continue to resonate with readers today. Although that of Tolstoy and Dostoevsky sometimes overshadows his legacy, Turgenev's influence on literature, both in Russia and beyond, is undeniable. His commitment to artistic beauty, psychological depth, and balanced social critique ensures that his works remain relevant and celebrated in the literary world.